Fuerte de Loreto. This big fort right here. Very famous fort, famous for the Battle of Cinco de Mayo. In 1862, when the battle happened, it was a perfect place to put a fort. Welcome back, everyone. We're back here in Puebla, and unfortunately it's very loud. We're actually right next to this this major highway street here, so it's a little bit loud. I hope you can hear me. But today we are going to be visiting a very interesting spot, and to get there we're going to go through a very old tunnel. Right here is the Túnel Cinco de Mayo. It used to be an old aqueduct, and it's a tunnel that actually, if you go through it, it connects to the Fuerte Loreto in the Zona de Fuertes, the zone of forts. And Fuerte Loreto, very famous fort, famous for the Battle of Cinco de Mayo, which was fought here in Puebla in 1862. So come along. Thanks for clicking on the video. If you want to help out the channel and help it grow, I really would appreciate it. Click on the like button down there, the subscribe button, and the little bell next to it to be notified for when new videos drop. It really helps the channel grow because it's going to help the YouTube algorithm recognize this content and spread it to other YouTube viewers. If you'd like to support the channel monetarily, I would appreciate that as well. You can leave a super thanks by clicking this thanks button here and give a small donation to the channel. I appreciate your support. So back to the video, enjoy. So like I said, this tunnel here connects to the fort, and in the Zona de Fuertes, the zone of forts, it's actually a big park area now, which is really nice. There is the Fuerte de Loreto that has its own museum with a lot of history about the Battle of Cinco de Mayo, and there's also a bunch of other stuff in that. There's a planetarium, there's a science museum, and it's also just a big nice park that you can walk around and enjoy your time on a very nice day with beautiful weather like it is today here in Puebla. So we're going to be checking that out. Now, interestingly, before we head through this tunnel, Cinco de Mayo is a celebration that's actually more popular in the United States than it is in Mexico. A lot of people in the United States think Cinco de Mayo is Mexico's Independence Day, but it actually isn't. It commemorates this battle that was fought and won here by the Mexican army against the French, who had actually invaded and occupied large parts of Mexico in 1862. So let's head into the tunnel. We'll check it out. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to see along the way in the tunnel, and then when we get to the Zona de Fuertes, the zone of forts, we'll check that out too. All right, we're inside. We are inside the tunnel entrance, and it was a little dark down here, but we came here on a Tuesday, and if you're coming here to visit Tuesdays, it's free to enter. I don't know exactly what the price of admission is if you come here on another day. I'm sure it's not that expensive, to be honest. As I mentioned, these are very old tunnels. This is Spanish colonial era tunnels. It's not the only tunnel in the city. There are some other tunnels in different places, and these were originally aqueducts. The tunnels connecting to the fort also provides for passage out to and from the fort, which is really cool. Of course, all the electric lights in here, obviously new, but I mean, imagine this tunnel, right, during the Spanish colonial era, or the first Spanish Empire days back in the 1800s. This would have been probably had torches or lanterns in here to keep everything lit up. Very cool. Now, I think above ground, if you were to walk from where the entrance is back there up to the zone of forts, it's really I don't know, 2 or 3 blocks. I don't know exactly how circuitous this tunnel is down here, how straight it goes. But like I said, we can walk all the way through here, and when we pop up on the other end, we're going to be in the zone of forts right next to Fuerte Loreto. Looks like there are some other entrances. This is blocked off. So the tunnel's network is more extensive than this one tunnel. And I know that some of them are closed. Not all of them are open. have signs with information here about like when these were constructed. Signs here explaining the like types of architecture used to create the tunnels, and also like looks like other buildings around. I always find it really interesting to see like old constructions like this that of course are still standing, but basically they're just, you know, arches like this and other like very simple but like very old construction techniques that have been around for, you know, like thousands of years, and this still holds up. And like even as in the scope of like ancient constructions, this is like super new actually compared to like things that you'll find in other places here in Latin America, but also like places in Europe. Oh, here they have like behind plexiglass here like some preserved artifacts, irons, cooking pans, scales and stuff. This is obviously like a lot of this stuff is newer, you know, like blowtorches and stuff like that. But still, very cool to see. So like I mentioned, there's more tunnels than just this one, of course, and a lot of them are closed off and not used anymore. But as I mentioned, they were aqueducts before, so they had to be pretty extensive within the city to be able to get water around. Here it looks like in 1965, Enrique Cordero y Torres, reporter, historian, interviewed people to try and figure out what was the extent of the tunnels back in the day, and he ended up drawing this map. You can see here the cathedral in the Zócalo in El Centro, and up here Fuerte de Loreto, the river running through. And we are actually, I think, in this tunnel right here. Very extensive tunnel network. Here they have the Aztec god Tlaloc, the rain god, who we learned about actually in our very first video we made in Mexico City, where we went to see Templo Mayor. Templo Mayor, one of the shrines, was to the god Tlaloc here. And because we're here in what used to be an aqueduct, the rain god is very significant. In a place like Puebla, where the climate is very arid, you would definitely need some sort of a water management system like these aqueducts, and the gods of the rain would be very, very important. The diagram here of Aztec aqueducts, like the ones that were used in Mexico City to bring the water from Chapultepec into the center, into Tenochtitlan. We popped up out of the tunnel here in this beautiful little square, beautiful little plaza. It looks like the tunnels where they used to be connected, we have to sort of like come up every so often, enter into a different door, and head back down. We are getting closer to the Zona de Fuertes. Okay, we are in the next part of the tunnel. This part of the tunnel is significantly darker. The ceilings are significantly lower. It's very, very claustrophobic in here. Something to mention, if you are claustrophobic, this may not be the best thing for you to do here in Puebla. I would recommend just going directly to the zone of forts and seeing the forts and not going through these tunnels. So this water system, the aqueducts here, they supplied water to the city for hundreds of years, eventually being abandoned. Now, of course, Puebla has a modern water system. Where are we headed here? Looks like there's another exit a way up, but we're not going to go there. We're going to keep going. Continue on through the tunnels. It's interesting, like up above ground, walking on the street. Seems like the distance is not that far, but there's something about walking underground through tunnels makes it feel like you're walking a lot further. Alright, it looks like we have reached the exit. And I don't know if this is the exit to the zone of forts. It looks like it is. Or if we have to continue on another tunnel, I'm not sure. This looks like it might be the end of the zone of forts. Looks like we can go up across this bridge. See the aqueducts here, like coming down this river, this dry river basin or creek bed. I'll look on my phone and find out exactly where we are. So we are indeed at the end of the tunnel. We are in the Zona de Fuertes. Right here by the tunnel entrance, there's actually this little lake, Lago de Concordia. And this lake, I imagine, is what would like fill up with rainwater and feed into the aqueducts that eventually go down that way where we came from to feed water all the way into the city. Now from here you can see actually like right over here there's a bunch of like tour buses that have pulled up at the stop here. So like I said, if you are claustrophobic, you don't want to go through the tunnel, you can definitely get here without having to go through the tunnel. Looks like there's also a bike trail that runs through the park, which is really nice. Because like I mentioned, this is more than just like being able to see the historic Fort Loreto. This is like a nice park, a big municipal urban park that you can walk around and just enjoy the day. So we're up here about halfway up the hill. From here you can already start to see a beautiful, beautiful view of the city, Puebla down there. You can see the lake here. Over there is the stadium. This is Estadio Olímpico Zaragoza. Very, very cool stadium over there, which I don't know how often it's used these days. Looks like the grass is a little bit brown. But up here, further up the hill, in fact, I think right there in front of us, that yellow fort-like looking building, I think is actually one of the battlements of Fuerte de Loreto, which of course is a preserved fort but also now a museum. And right here, halfway up along your trek up the hill, there is a cafe, Cafe Punta del Cielo. But today, right now, it's closed. El Estadio Olímpico Zaragoza. Definitely looks like not in use these days, but still a pretty cool stadium here. Makes me wonder, you know, it's Estadio Olímpico. It makes me wonder, because Puebla is relatively close to Mexico City, if this was one of the facilities used in the 1968 Summer Olympics. The Fuerte de Loreto. And I was right. This is it. This big fort right here. Let's go inside. We'll check it out. Here we are inside. Inside Fuerte Loreto. Very, very cool fort here. And the entrance fee to get in is 75 pesos. It's free actually to enter here on Sunday, which means that you're not going to be able to do the free day on the tunnels and the free day on the fort in the same day. But still, 75 pesos, not really that much. Only a few bucks to get in. It looks like it's well worth it. Some old cannons out here, giant mortar over there, and the battlements that we saw from down below can actually go up onto the battlements up here and see what the view would have been like. Yeah, from here in the battlements, you can see this view straight down. And of course all of this construction here, Let's see from over here. All of this construction that's now part of the, tourist attraction and everything, the road, all of that. None of that would have been here. In 1862, when the battle happened, it was a perfect place to put a fort. Up here on the other battlement, up on like the north, I guess, side of the fort, the uphill side. And you can see the fort. It's not even really that big. The battlements, you can see from this battlement, the fort is laid out in a square, basically, with 4 circular battlements at each corner. You can see the other battlement right over there. It's pretty close. And building in the center, what would have been, the armory where they kept all the weapons, and also where all the soldiers would have lived. That is what is now the museum. And I want to head in there and take a look. Not sure if we can film in there. I know we can take photos. Got a little mixed information from the person who sold us our ticket. She said perfectly fine to film out here, outside, but inside you can only take photos. Or you can ask the people at the museum if they will let you film, and maybe they will. So let's head inside and see what we can see. So the verdict, it turns out, not allowed to use the camera in here, but allowed to use the phone. So we can film a little video and take some pictures. Here in the first hall, there's like this old musket and a couple of old uniforms. This is from the era of like 1862. That's when the Battle of Cinco de Mayo happened. There's a cannon out here, as well as some interesting plans of the fort. You can see the plan of Fuerte de Loreto here on the left, and then also, I think this is a plan of Fuerte Guadalupe, which is another fort that was in this area. And here, a very, very long and very detailed timeline from the time of independence from the Spanish, back in the early 1800s, all the way up to the restoration of the Republic after the Mexican Empire, and as well as after the foreign intervention, the French attacking, and the Battle of Cinco de Mayo. Eventually, the entire period ending with the restoration of the Republic here in 1867. A very interesting, very detailed history here on this timeline. Some more weapons here, a cavalry carbine and saber, as well as some information about the War of the Reforma, which is like the end of the first Mexican Empire. Also information here about the U.S. invasion of Mexico and the fort during that time. Important to remember, of course, the fort was here before the famous Battle of Cinco de Mayo in 1862, here for the U.S. invasion back in the late 1840s. Very cool mural here also with Benito Juarez at the center and the Mexican flag. Benito Juarez, of course, pictured here in this photograph. Probably one of the most famous presidents in Mexican history. President during the the Reform War that eventually led to the end of the first Mexican Empire. And then also president during the French intervention and the war which brought the famous Battle of Cinco de Mayo in 1862. Very, very famous guy, Benito Juarez, and you will know that if you go to Mexico because his name is all over everything. Streets, parks, statues, lots of stuff named after Benito Juarez. And here a little bit of information about Napoleonic Empire. Now, this is not the original Napoleon, the French Revolution Napoleon. This is Napoleon III, and really the whole cause of the French intervention that eventually led to, the famous Battle of Cinco de Mayo. Napoleon III wanted to prevent the expansion of the United States, potentially down into Mexico, so his idea was, of course, to take over land in Mexico. And that's what he did in the French intervention in the 1860s. Now, the interesting thing is, of course, this is happening while the United States is in a civil war, so distracted, basically. And Napoleon III thought it would be a great time to take over the port of Veracruz and spread out his troops from there, and eventually made his way all the way up here to Puebla. And here a painting depicting the famous Battle of Cinco de Mayo. This is the second Battle of Cinco de Mayo. And you can see actually the fort in the background with the French and Mexican soldiers fighting in front. More uniforms here. This uniform is actually of the French troops, so they have that preserved here in the museum as well. Interesting artifacts here, a battle flag of one of the units, the military units, as well as like a bugle that would be used to signal the troops. Because of course, back in the day, there's no radio communication or anything, and if you have lots of troops that you have to coordinate on a chaotic battlefield, you need some way to do it. So you use a bugle, and also like visual cues like flags and whatnot. But you use a bugle to play different like cadences, different little songs, essentially, to tell your soldiers exactly what to do. And here, a painting of Ignacio Zaragoza. Now, Zaragoza, very famous, and he was a military commander during the Battle of Cinco de Mayo. In fact, he was the commander who was in charge of like overall the Mexican troops here in this area during the Battle of Cinco de Mayo. So it's his plan, it's his leadership that led to the victory in the Battle of Cinco de Mayo. Zaragoza was the Secretary of War and the Secretary of the Navy under President Benito Juarez. And unfortunately, right after this battle, like a few months after, he contracted typhoid fever and died. And the reason why Puebla, the name of Puebla right now is Puebla de Zaragoza, that's the full name of Puebla, is because they named it after him. Benito Juarez decreed that the city be named after him after he died and after his victory at the Battle of Cinco de Mayo. They have some of Zaragoza's things here, including his uniform here, along with his cavalry saber. Here, his eyeglasses, as well as like a set of binoculars that he used, I guess, during the battle. A couple of little informational placards here, one on Ignacio Zaragoza, which is kind of hard to read here on the video because it's white text on more or less a white background. A little section here in more detail about the Battle of Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, 1862. Some photos here in this next section of other like generals and like famous to the, not just the Battle of Cinco de Mayo, well, not specifically the Battle of Cinco de Mayo, but the larger campaign in the region. Here is Miguel Negrete, looking pretty strong here in the portrait. They had some artifacts of his, including a telegraph and a telescope here on display. They also had in this section a really interesting like a rifle that would have been like the standard rifle for Mexican troops, as well as this cool hat and military epaulets. And of course, you can see someone wearing the hat and military epaulets here in this portrait. This here is General Felipe Berriozabal. He's got a lot of medals on his chest, and I gotta say, that is a strikingly awesome beard that he is rocking. Some military flags here, flags of the Light Battalion of Toluca. And in this section, many more generals, portraits of generals, whose names I don't really recognize, but this is General Joaquin Colombes, rocking the shaved head and cool beard. Jesus Gonzalez Ortega, right here, with the mustache, rocking mustache, very good looking. And Juan Nepomuceno Mendez, looking good as well, cool beard, nice mustache, epaulets, lots of medals on his chest. And last but certainly not least, Juan C. Francisco Lucas. An older gentleman here, but still looking good, Juan. Of course, they have photos, or a painting here of like all the generals, basically, getting together and planning some battles and whatnot. I like how the general in the center is pointing at something on the map, but also making a fist. It's very, very powerful. Here's some pistols, revolvers, military sidearms here in a case. And also very interesting, this relief, which I think is like metal. It shows the army, I think, returning victoriously to the Zócalo in Puebla. It looks like that's the cathedral in the top left and the fountain at the center. And then like the buildings, it looks a lot like the Zócalo in Puebla. I think that's what this is. And of course here, a portrait of a very, very important historical figure in Mexican history, Porfirio Diaz, who we have talked about in many videos in the past. Now, before he was president and dictator of Mexico for like 30 years, Porfirio Diaz was a military man. He fought and led troops during the French intervention. And in the last room here, a mural of the arrival of Emperor Maximilian here in Puebla. A very interesting mural, a very interesting style. And that's about it for the museum here at the fort. It was very interesting and definitely worth the 75 pesos to get in. well, I think that's gonna do it. I think that's gonna do it for this video. Very, very cool. Very cool place to see, Fuerte de Loreto. The entire Zona de los Fuertes, the tunnel, the Cinco de Mayo tunnel coming up through here, being able to see this really cool fort with the museum inside. The museum was actually quite interesting. There was a lot of interesting stuff in there that I didn't know exactly what to expect, but I was really glad that we saw it. So that's gonna do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed making this one, and there's gonna be plenty more coming from here in Puebla, so stay tuned for that, and we'll see you in the next one.